Hi guys, it's Jeff at Science Racing. This video is about gearing your KTM Husky, or, well, not really the gas because they don't have this model, but gearing your 500 dual sport bike for dual sport usage, to where it will work in the dirt areas and the pavement also. When you have to connect some of the dirt. So this video applies to the 450s and 500s primarily. The 350s, I don't have one of those on hand to double check things, but I'm pretty sure all this, the way the sprocket fits and stuff is the exact same on them. So I know a lot of you guys use 350s for dual sport. And let's define dual sport, because back east, it seems like a lot of events are put on back there called dual sport, where it's actually just on easy trails, maybe even harder trails, I don't know. But in Colorado, which is where I'm from and where I ride, out here dual sport is primarily dirt roads, Jeep roads, an occasional easy trail to connect something together, and then of course some pavement to connect the routes together. And we have very, very few easy trails in Colorado. So a big dual sport bike, with a big tank and tall gearing and bags and stuff, it doesn't make sense to ride that setup on trails, at least not for me. I've got a trail bike for that, so my 300. All right, guys, so this year I've done a couple of big rides. I did a ride in Baja for several days, and then I did the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route, which was, well, we added a little bit to it, but it was 780 miles. And on both those rides, I had 1450 gearing, and it worked just fine. But I wanted a little bit taller gearing for the paved sections, because sometimes you have to hop on pavement for 20 miles, and you don't want to buzz your motor too hard, but you still want to be able to run with the traffic, at 65 miles an hour. And so I decided I wanted to gear it up a little more. So I put a 15 tooth on the front, changed from the stock 14 to a 15. And the problem with the 15 is it's a tight squeeze. It doesn't fit well on that piece. That piece has been modified, so it's normally a lot longer. And that piece doesn't fit. You can grind on it and make it fit. And putting a slave cylinder guard like this one from Recluse, it doesn't go right on either. I put one on a friend's bike, and in this section here, I had to grind a lot with my porting tool. And it came out really nice. Once it was mounted up, you couldn't even tell I'd done it, because the sprocket, kind of blocks the view, but I polished it up and it made it look nice. But it was a pain in the butt to do. And then the clearance was so tight, I just thought, any little piece of rock or whatever gets caught in that chain, it's going to jam up in there, not necessarily stop the motion of the chain, but dig in and tear stuff up. So I don't really like that 15 on there. That's what I've got on here now. And I've been running it with no kind of a guard here, which doesn't bother me much, but it would be a little bit nicer to have a guard. And then I modified that piece. I took the back half of it and I modified it, and it's up in, actually it's not up in there now. I took it off. I don't know where it is, but it's over here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I modified that, and that's what I've been using. But I've decided I want to go to the 14. I'm going back to the 14, and I'm going to change the rear sprocket. So, all right, so right now I've got 1550 gearing on there, and I've been riding it around that way, and I like it. First gear is still plenty low for any type of dual sport riding, and fifth gear is a lot better for cruising down the road. So 1550 ends up 3.33 gear ratio. And the way you do that is you just take the 50 and you divide it with the 15. And the same way here, 47 divided by 14 gives me almost the same ratio. It's almost identical. So that's what I'm going to do now. 1447, changing the rear sprocket and the front sprocket. And then that way I'll be able to put this guard on there. And this guard comes with this piece, and then this hardware right here. This is the old one. All right, so that's $85 from Recluse. We keep these in stock for a lot of different models of bikes. And so this is going to go on to replace what was there before. Now, when I had that 1450 gearing on it, on both those rides, on the easy dirt roads where you're just cruising along, the chain slapping noise about drove me nuts. 4 days of that, I had enough. I just thought, I don't want to ride the bike again with that noise. We hear this complaint a lot. You know, it's when the chain whips up and down and touches another piece on the chassis, you know, like the piece that was here, the one that's up in there, whatever. The chain at those no load conditions, if you're on the throttle, it doesn't make that noise. But if you're just cruising along, it makes a hell of a racket, and it's really annoying. I've got a quiet muffler on here, the stock one, and I don't like a lot of noise. Noise, I mean, whether you guys care to admit it or not, noise wears you down. By the end of the day, the noise is very exhausting to me. I can't stand loud bikes for that reason, and a lot of other reasons, but and I don't like other noises. I don't like rattles in my truck. You know, I'm really kind of picky about noises. So anyhow, so I'm going to go back to the 14 in the front. I'm going to change to a 47 in the rear. You see, I'm going to have the same ratio. Now the stock sprockets stock front one comes with this rubber cushion thing on here, which they claim is to quiet it. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't do a damn thing. It might take a slight bit of noise out of there, but you sure as hell can't tell it. So I'm going to put just a regular 14 on there. Because this one's already getting a little bit tired. You know, it's starting to get some gap between the teeth, and I see no need to put that back on there, so I'm going to put a brand new sprocket on there from DDC. All right, guys, so that's kind of been my journey on the sprocket thing, and I've got a couple other friends same way. They're wanting to get rid of the clattering noise, and they're wanting to gear their bikes up. But as you gear them up, the noise gets worse. I mean, as you go up in the countershaft sprocket size, it gets worse. The bikes with 13s on the front don't produce a lot of noise, just very little. But that's more trail gearing. And so that's kind of my story on this. I'm sick of the noise. I want taller gearing. And so I've come up with a solution to get rid of the noise and get the gearing that I want. And so I'm not going to show you how to do this installation of this piece step by step. It comes with good instructions. It's only about a 5-minute installation. It's very easy to do. Maybe 10, 15 minutes. Add a beer, maybe 20. And it's very easy to do, but I'll just give you a couple of pointers that I do want to point out. I see guys all the time, when they're going to do a sprocket change on the front, they break the chain. They break the master link out. You know, take the master link off and break the chain. Well, at that point, now you've got a sprocket that just spins, so now you have to have a sprocket holding tool. And we sell a lot of those, but you know, I got to tell you, on this particular application, they're a little clumsy to use. Operating the tool, or you know, holding the tool while trying to get this loose, not easy. So I leave the chain on. The very first thing I do is I remove this bolt. And they're really Loctited in there from the factory. If you want to do it with a ratchet, go right ahead. A ratchet, to me, is the hard way to do it. I'm going to use this air gun right here. 1/2-inch drive air gun, and zip that out of there. And that's a powerful air gun. I've had it for a long time. I know how it works and how strong it is. And you know, it struggles to get that out of there. You can also put heat. You can take a torch and put heat right in the center of this and loosen it up. I mean, that will loosen up the Loctite and make the bolt come out much easier. I only do that if I have to. Well, while you're there, if you'd like, you might want to change this washer to one of the Dirt Tricks ones. And that's a very popular item. I don't use them. I use the stock one. Only other tip I have on this area right here is when you're putting this bolt back on, it's got a step on the back side of it that holds the washer in place to keep the washer round. So you got to make sure that you have this washer on that step. And if you're going to use the air gun to tighten it, which I am going to, you got to be really careful not to get this thing off center and then tighten it, because you'll damage this and you'll have to throw it away. So the best thing to do is when you're tightening it, to tighten it by hand, with a ratchet and a socket. Get that washer in there and just snug it. Then use the air gun to tighten it down. Also, definitely use a red thread locker, red or green. Do not use blue. That's very light. That's for very lightweight applications like 6mm bolts like this. For a big bolt like that, you definitely want to use at least red. And when you go to tighten it, make sure your chain is back on. All right, so let's back up a little bit. After you remove this bolt, now you got to get the sprocket off. So in order to do that, you need to loosen up the chain. Well, the way I do that is I take the axle nut off. I push the axle through. So now the axle is sticking out and it's not by the adjuster. So now I can just push it forward. All the way forward until the bolt hits the axle. Now the chain, as you can see, is super loose and you can get it off the sprocket. Should be no problem at that point to remove the front sprocket. So those are my tips. The first thing you do is to remove the bolt with the chain still intact. When you put the bolt back in, use a red thread locker. And in order to get the chain off, do this little trick back here to the axle. Bam, you should have it. All right, guys, I'll show you what it looks like after I've got it all mounted up. So stay tuned for the next step here. Okay, guys, here's what it looks like mounted up. 47 tooth DDC sprocket on the rear and 14 on the front. I got rid of that 15, put on these two pieces, plus underneath here is, let's see if you can see that. All right, here, this piece that comes in the kit also. So there's 3 pieces in the kit. This bike has a recluse auto clutch in it, but this whole kit works with a manual clutch setup as well. And now I'm more comfortable with the clearance that I've got in here. And I've already gone out and ridden it. I put on about 20 miles on it, and it's quiet. It got rid of all that slapping noise. Maybe get a little slap every grate once in a while, but it's totally different than it was before. Before, the thing was driving me nuts. It was extremely loud clattering sound, and now it sounds real normal. So, I mean, of course, there's still some chain noise, but it's not that clattering sound. But so, guys, if you're having that problem towards driving you nuts, you want to get rid of it, this is the solution. Just install this kit with these 3 pieces. I highly recommend the 14 on the front, not a 15. If you think you just absolutely have to have a 15 for some reason, well, then you can grind on this piece and on this piece, but it's kind of tricky to do to get it right. I'd recommend you just go to a 14 and then adjust your back sprocket to get the gearing set up that you want. All right, guys, that's all for now on this. Hope to see you out on the trails or out dual sporting. And please help out with your trails and anything to do with motorcycles that you can. Try to get new people into the sport and be kind to other trail users. Please like us on Instagram and Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a shout out when you can. Throw us a bone once in a while. That's all for now.